BL kids, you are dismissed. Forgive me if I clear my throat a lot. I have that thing that's going around. So if you share it with me, I thank you so much. I'll get you back later. We're going to just walk right into the book of Matthew. Matthew 6. And so Matthew 5, 6, and 7 are what we call the Sermon on the Mount. It's one of the more famous sermons by Jesus Christ. I don't know how you rank one more than the other, but it's a long one. And we know that this isn't verbatim exactly what he said in terms of, first word to the end. It's the paraphrase of what he said. It's what he said, but he certainly was longer than just a minute and a half, the whole sermon. And so if we walk into chapter 6, this is Christ talking. The people, the crowd of people around him. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of people, to be seen by them. Otherwise, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. Be careful to not go around looking like you're righteous, looking like you're super holy and spiritual and amazing, so people can see you that way. Christ continues throughout all of his words and throughout all of his ministry, he continues to talk to and talk about the heart of the matter, the heart of the people. Being holy and looking holy look the same. It's where it begins that Christ is challenging. Don't practice righteousness in front of people to be seen by them. Otherwise, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. I'm the person, and I struggle with this. This is my mental, what I'd like to be my reality, and it isn't always that way. I don't want to do what's right in God's eyes for the reward. That's not why I want to do it. I want to do it because God told me to do it. And that's good enough for me. But I'm human, and you're human, and we're human. And so he knows that we sometimes need some incentive. I get that. What is the reward? I don't know exactly what that is. But I know this. The reward that people give and the reward that God has to offer are in no way comparable. If I'm going to choose who to give me a gift, if I could choose anybody in the world to give me a gift, you might think I'll pick Trump because he's rich. He doesn't really know me, does he? I'll put my wife because she knows me better than anybody else. And she loves me more than anybody else. And so I know the gift that she'll give me is better than anybody else's, even if it costs $5. I'm going to choose a gift from someone, it's going to be God. But, because we're human and because I like the applause and I like the accolades, I tend to want the reward that's the here and now. I tend to want the applause. And I struggle with that. And I'm sure that you do too. And Christ knows we struggle with that. He's telling you, don't live for that. Verse 2. So whenever you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogue and on the streets, be applauded by people. I assure you, they've got their reward. I love the beginning of verse 2. It's so clear. So whenever you give to the poor, what's the assumption there? That you're giving to the poor. It's not an if you give to the poor, it's when you give to the poor. Now he's speaking to a Jewish crowd and a part of their culture, a big part of their culture, a big part of what they understand as being what God has asked them and told them to do. In fact, in verse 1, when it says righteousness, that can be translated as charitable giving, actually, in that context. Some Bibles do actually translate it that way. Whenever you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet. Don't do it to get the accolades and the respect and the renown and the popularity. Because if you do, that's fine. That's your reward. Enjoy it. Because you chose this reward over that one. And we chose poorly. They've got the reward. And I see that word hypocrite, and I find it maybe sad and interesting, because I believe if Christ were to come down and speak to us today, we would be the people on the opposite side of the table that He's calling the hypocrites. Christians. Maybe not you, I don't know your life, right? But me, certainly. Hypocrites. And so we think that we're on Christ's side so often. We got Christ on our side. We're Christians. We're followers of Christ. And I just think that if Christ came down, we would realize we weren't really on His side. Because we were really all about getting the human respect, the human accolades, and weren't interested in what God had to offer. Verse 3. But when you give, there's again, when you give to the poor, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. And your Father, who sees in secret, will reward you. Now, this would never happen today. But back then, people actually did things to be seen doing them. Some of you got a joke there, right? Some people actually did things that looked super spiritual to be considered super spiritual. And that would never happen today. Insert laughter, because yes, it certainly would. We see it all the time, don't we?
Crazy.
It's crazy, exactly, it's crazy. So what God and Christ is saying is, listen, the heart of the matter matters. And you've got to stop being seen as being righteous and simply be righteous. Be about what God's about. Be closer to the heart of God than the heart of the people. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And Christ continues. In the next two pieces of the sermon, it's almost the same exact pattern. He talks about prayer. When you pray, don't be on the street corner saying all these eloquent words and that sounds so beautiful and sounds so harmonious and sounds so spiritual. Simply, people will see you being spiritual. Instead, go to the closet, close the door, and pray in secret. And the Father who sees in secret will reward you. If you want to pray on the side of the street corner and be heard and be seen as being righteous, that's fine. And that's the reward. I hope you like it, because you chose poorly. You chose one over the other. And he continues, similar pattern here about fasting. When you fast, don't come staggering in because you're so hungry you can't stand it anymore. And you look so sad and so downcast because you just want one more burger. And people are going to see how hungry you are and see how much pain you're in and see, oh, he is so spiritual. She is so holy. Look how hungry they are. Let's give them applause. No, instead, put oil on your head. Take a bath. Come in looking like you've been well fed. And no one will know. And the Father who sees in secret will reward you. Christ is very clear that the heart matters. He continues to speak to the heart. Not because he wants to be mean, but because he knows it's better for you. Verse 19 of chapter 6, Christ continues in his sermon, don't collect for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but collect for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves don't break in and steal. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Make this connection between don't choose temporary over eternal. Don't live here, live for this, to accumulate stuff, when you should be living for the eternal. What God has asked us to do for God. I find it interesting again that he would talk about stuff here. And we know that we like to have stuff, don't we? We're Americans. Stuff is good. And the more stuff we get, the more stuff we want. Right? Has it ever satisfied you, honestly? Has it ever? I mean, was the house big enough? Was it nice enough? Was the car enough? For most of us, no, it wasn't. I had to have more. I had to have something bigger or something different. I wasn't really satisfied. We're trying to fill something inside of us eternally with something that's temporary. Not only will our stuff burn up and rust away, not only will your bank account hit zero, will the market crash one day and all your money that you have is worthless, but all that accolades and the applause that you got, it's also temporary. You don't believe that? Watch the news. All kinds of people, very reputable, right? Reputable, well-respected, loved by the community, loved by the entire nation. One thing comes out, hate it, despise, erase them from your memory. Bill Cosby. Right? Whether it's true or not, I would say him was true, but anybody in our society, in our famous people, comes out, all the accolades, all the applause, all the awards taken, forgotten, ignored, and applause replaced with hate and disrespect. So even the respect that you're fighting for and living for, it also is temporary. And can fall away just like that. Who do you live for? Self or God? Verse 24. Christ continues, no one can be a slave of two masters, because either he will hate one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot be slaves of God and of money. You cannot be slaves of God and of money. And here's what Christ is saying. You are one of those two. You're either a slave to the world, to stuff, to money, or you're a slave to God. That word slave, we don't like that word slave. And rightfully so. In human terms, terrible word. Abuse, awful. Right? But if any person, anything was worthy of being a master over a slave, it's God. And so what Jesus is saying, I would tell you, is this. We are to be a slave to the only master worthy of being a slave to. And if we're a slave to God, all that I have and all that I am belongs to Him. But we live as if that isn't really true. My blood, my sweat, my tears, my stuff. The reward that we're looking for, that we've chosen, is a reward from people. And the master we've chosen is not God. It's the world, it's our stuff, it's our money. You cannot be slaves of God and of money. This next piece, it'll fit, I promise. It'll make sense. But this next part is a part that I would rather talk to you about sex than this. Ooh, I got uncomfortable, didn't I? Use the word. I did. I used it twice. Here it is. I'm going to show you a graphic up here. I'll read it to you because you can't read it. Did you know that Christians give less today per capita than during the Great Depression? Did you hear that? Yes. Christians today give less per person than during the Great Depression, when people were jumping out of buildings because they were so broke. There are 247 million people in America in 2015 who claim to be a Christian. And we know that could be cultural Christianity. They say they are, maybe they're not really a follower of Christ, but they would say they are because in America, it actually benefits, or it used to say you're a Christian. It's just a part of what you say. 99 million people in America in 2015 went to church regularly. And they redefined regular attendance in church. It's actually 2 and 5 Sundays is a regular attender of church. I don't understand it. It's weird for me because I was growing in church. I get it. I'll take 2 over 9. I'm glad that you're here for 20 people. No shame there. It's just weird for me because I'm just not used to that. That's the reality. Pastors tell you today, 2 and 5 people are regular attenders of your church. 2 and 5 Sundays, excuse me. 99 million people go to church regularly in America. Of the 99 million, 1.5 million people give to the church regularly. Tithe. Okay? So that's why things get weird, right? The word tithe, people begin thinking, he's talking about money. And if it was a hard sell getting you here, and you're like, all they want is your money, today is proof that maybe that's true. If you know me, it's not true, but there's some evidence for you to take home and say, I knew it! All they want is your money. No, I don't. But I don't want your money to be yours. Why? Because God doesn't want your money to be yours. When your money is yours, it's all about how can I get more. And during the Depression, even when the people had nothing, they still found ways to give. And something in our culture has changed to where we don't really give anymore. Whether to church or to other things. Ecclesiastes 5:10. The one who loves money is never satisfied with money. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with income. This too is futile. Ecclesiastes, written by Solomon, the son of David, the king. And this is his life's work. Ecclesiastes, his whole life's work. He kind of wrote it during periods of his life. And what he realized was all this, the richest man in the world at that time, very wealthy, all the stuff that I have, it's futile. It's useless. It does no good in the long stretch of time without God. Solomon realized that. And this phrase, this too is futile, is just sprinkled all through the book of Ecclesiastes. Here's some history for you. Tithing means a tenth. Okay, so in the Old Testament, in Genesis, Abraham was one of the first people to begin promising a tenth of their stuff to God, to giving it away, essentially. Jacob was another person who promised to give. In the book of Leviticus, we have it as a part of the law of the Jewish people to give 10% of all the stuff that they got. The livestock, the crops, okay? So 10% of my stuff would go to the temple or go to the worship places or go to the poor, the widows, and the orphans, and the strangers, the people who are not Jewish. And if you didn't want to get rid of your stuff because you needed it maybe to make more livestock in order to, whatever that looks like, you needed the seeds or whatever, you could actually pay a cash value instead of the stuff, but it was actually 12% of what you paid instead of actually 10% of what you had. So the Jewish people knew, if I don't want to get rid of the stuff, I can pay, but it actually costs 12%. So here's some newsflash for you. If you ain't paying the church in livestock or corn, it's can't be 12%. I'm just saying, it's in there, I'm just saying. If you're mad at me, just wait till the end, okay? You'll get mad, it's fine. 12%. Did you know, a Jewish person in the Old Testament, even in the New, by the end of the year actually gave 23% of their stuff back to the people, back to the worship places, and back to the priests. 23%. Once a year, they would get all their stuff together and they would lay it in a pile, and widows and orphans and strangers, aliens, people who weren't Jewish, would come and take. The Levite priests who their job was to take care of the temple, take care of the worship places. They didn't really have a job. They didn't really have any income. They lived off of the tithes, how they survived. They actually tithed on what they got and gave back to the people. Why? Because they knew it wasn't theirs. And when it became theirs, all they wanted was to keep it and to get more. And God is very clear about the heart mattering. And why we give is more important than what we give and how much. Difficult topic. Because the problem is, people might hear me saying, I want your money. Here's the reality, church. Big Lake Church of God has been doing very, very well. We've been very, very blessed with people in this place who give faithfully. There are like 5 families in this church. If they were to leave or something happened to them, we'd be in some serious trouble. That's the reality. They have carried this place for years during times of famine and times of drought. I told you about 4 months ago in a sermon, if you don't believe in what we're doing at Big Lake, that's fine. I don't know why you're coming. It seems strange to me. I'm glad that you're here. Then find somewhere else to give. Just don't keep it. Don't keep it. It's doing you no good. Because it's yours when it's supposed to be God's. When you believe it's God's and know it's not yours, it's a whole lot easier to give more away. I think all in this room would say, if I had an opportunity, if I had enough money, I would give to the poor. I would find some way. If I had enough, I would. I just can't. And maybe that's true, I don't know. The chances are you can give more than what you give now. You can say no to something else for yourself. Say yes to what God's about. And if you don't believe Big Lake is doing what God's about, that's fine. Number 1, come see me. I want to know how and how can we do better. Number 2, find somewhere that you can give. And maybe you can't do 10%. Listen, I can't speak like I don't know your life. I have no idea. Take baby steps and find some way to give a little here and give a little there and make it less yours and more His. Mark 12, 41 through 44. I love this image. This is Christ sitting in the temple, essentially. And the temple, in the courtyard there in the corner, is the treasury, where you would come and you would lay your tithe down. And you can actually watch and see what people are doing. And there was this whole, big deal of people coming in with big wads of cash. And they would lay it down and people would celebrate, oh, look at that, woo! And they'd all give their accolades, they'd all give their respect, and they would look so good. And Christ is sitting there watching this happening. In verse 41, sitting across from the temple treasury, he watched how the crowd dropped the money into the treasury. Many rich people were putting in large sums, and a poor widow came and dropped in 2 tiny coins worth very little. Summoning his disciples, he said to them, I assure you, this poor widow has put in more than all those giving to the temple treasury. For they all gave out of their surplus, but she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she possessed, all she had to live on. This poor widow lived by faith. And can you imagine, this was what's happening, in case you didn't know. People were walking with big bags of money, and they were flaunting it. And they were getting applauses and passing them back for their great generous gift. And it in no way hurt them. They just gave, because they had all the extra to give. And people were, hallelujah, good job. and this poor woman who was probably in between two people who had a bag full of money must at some level feel a little bit insecure and feel a little bit like, I don't belong here, but I have to be obedient. And she must walk, following this person, and just throwing these 2 coins and must feel like that is worthless. It's all I have to offer. And you can imagine God standing right next to him, Jesus, and saying, you gave more than anybody else here today. Because you gave out of your poverty, and they just gave out of their surplus. I told you all, here's my confession. I was watching a previous sermon of mine, not because I like watching myself. I don't actually like watching myself, but that was a similar sermon, and I want to give the same one twice. And so I'm watching it, and at the end of it, I was telling you all that I really felt like God was calling our family to give to where it would hurt. And we were going to have a meeting and talking about how can we do that. It never happened. I forgot about it. Didn't lie to you, I just forgot. It wasn't important enough, I guess. I don't know what to tell you. We've always been 10%ers, but it never hurts. And so we're going to start with that 12% and go from there. I'm just telling you all to hold me accountable, not because I'm bragging. I didn't follow through what I told you I was going to do. We didn't do it. I'm sorry for that. But we're going to do more because God has called us to be obedient and to give to where it hurts. Otherwise, where's the faith at in our life? I would ask you this. If you don't give, why? Would you? If you don't believe in what we're doing here at Big Lake, it's fine. Find somewhere else to put it. I can live with that. If you give some, can you give more? Not because we need it, but because you don't. I kept closing a song. My intention that you just pray. You just, in the midst of this, what is God telling you? What's God challenging you to do? If God is the center of our life, He should be the one leading and pulling us where we should go. Let me pray for you. Father, thank you so much for who you are. Thank you for how much you love us. Thank you for being our master. You're the only one worthy of that title. May we follow you. May we only serve you. May our stuff be yours. May our hearts be cleansed of self-righteousness, of fake spirituality, of inauthentic faith, and of selfishness. May it belong to you, may it be for you, may it be about you. Challenge us in this, and may our faith grow.